I'm Matt Jones. I'm the lead vehicle artist at DPS Games. That's a wargaming company. That's our studio in Guildford in the UK. Before I get into talking about cognitive affordance, I'm going to tell you a little bit about me and how I ended up at DPS Games. This is DPS Games. These are all the games I've worked on in the past. Not all of them, actually. There's a few more iterations of those games. I'm a vehicle artist. Obviously, I've worked on a lot of vehicle games. I started out as a designer, a level designer. Did that for a year and found out that actually I really wanted to be an artist. I want to make the assets. I want to see the vehicles, and vehicles specifically is what I really wanted to do. And I got interviewed internally at Codemasters by Nick Payne, the then art manager, and he put me onto a race driver grid. And I loved it. It was my dream job. It's like straight away the thing I really wanted to do, and I kept doing it again and again, and working with fantastic teams, making fantastic games, ultimately becoming the group art lead on F1. So I did several F1 games, and I got to a certain point where I'd written the specification, I'd made it so that we scan all the cars, we do all the outsource, everything works seamlessly. And it got to a point where I was like, I need a new challenge. I need to do something new. And so an opportunity came up in France. So I moved my whole family to France and worked on Microsoft Flight Simulator. So it's like I got to start again. There was no specification, anything like that. So it was about build the benchmark model, build the benchmark asset, write all the specification, and get the outsource machine up and running. And I did all of this, and it was super exciting, great team. I'm sure you've seen Flight Simulator and how good it looks. But I stood back from it, looked at it, and what I'd done was stop making cars and start making cars with wings. I was doing exactly the same thing. And so, as at this point, I got a phone call from the same art manager, Nick Payne, that hired me all those years ago in Codemasters, and he said he's been tasked with building a studio in the UK for wargaming. And it's going to be a huge studio. They've got a massive budget, and it's going to be a very vehicle-centric game, and he wants me to lead the vehicles on it. Interested? And so, to introduce that a little bit to you, I just want to take you through that conversation that we had on the phone. Now, the game hasn't been announced yet, but I figure there's enough out there that I can say this. Just keep it in these four walls. So he said it's a AAA free-to-play game. This is wargaming AAA. I don't know how many A's that is, 4, 5, I'm not sure. It's big budget. It's an arena-based vehicle combat game, 15 versus 15. Fantastical vehicles from an old future timeline. We get to make brand new vehicles. We get to design them. We get to decide what they do. Everything about them will be us. It's not us recreating something that exists. It's about us creating something that people will see and love, and it will form a digital hobby for people. It'll be about vehicle collection, vehicle customization. And so when I thought I was living the dream making all these F1 cars, I was like, no, this is the dream. But it's not that easy. So I'm going to skip forward. I'm going to show you a few of the vehicle classes that we have in this game. And so I've been doing this for 3 years. And so we've come to the point where we've got quite a lot of vehicles. We've got a lot of customization. And these are the 4 vehicle classes. So let's start. We've got Raiders. They're bikes, okay? They're all bikes. They're fast. They've got weak weapons, weak armor, but these things will get around the levels really quickly, cause a lot of trouble, cause a lot of mischief. This is for the adrenaline junkie. Super fast, lots of tricks. Next, this is a vehicle very close to my heart because it's one of the first ones I worked on. Completely designed it myself, went through lots of iterations, working out what this thing would look like. But it's totally unique. It's not like anything we've seen before, and so this was really cool to me. And this represents our hunters. The hunters, they're hunters. They go around, they hunt those raiders. Raiders stay away from these because they will just shoot them and they will disintegrate. Next, we've got specialists. Our specialists, these have got great guns, no armor. They'll sit at the back of the map. They'll shoot from distance. This one has a deployable armor shield, so it will stop somewhere, put its armor up, shoot. Anything gets around the back of it, dust. And then finally, we have the Behemoth class. These are huge, brute force, moving fortresses. These things are all about armor, slow-moving, big guns. And so, how do we make those classes? The main thing that design wanted from us as art was to have a clear differential between those classes. So when you see them, within an instant, you'll know what class that is. And so the first thing we used, and the most obvious thing to do, was to use scale. Now, this is why I don't have the next slide on this piece. Before I go into the scale, actually, I want to talk about what this affordance is. This is essentially a really quick slide to describe what cognitive affordance is. This is what we don't want to do. This is what we do want to do. We've all been to a door, tried to pull it open, and it's a push door, and it's affordance gone wrong. They've used a signifier to fix it. It doesn't fix it. It's wrong. So we wanted to avoid this. And so now we're going to the scale. So we're talking about those classes, and the behemoth is the biggest vehicle we've got in the game. It's clear. You'll see it in the distance, and you'll go, that is a behemoth class. It's huge. I know exactly what to expect. It's going to have a lot of armor. It's going to be a problem. Raiders, tiny. They're zipping around really quickly. You can immediately notice where on the map these raiders are. Anything in between, hunters and specialists, very similar. Specialists will have a big gun. They'll do something a little bit different in their silhouette, so you'll be able to spot the difference between those, but they're very similar. But you'll always see the difference between the classes based on their scale. And so, the next element to this is speed. So with speed, anything big will use tracks. It's super heavy, so we'll rely on running along the tracks. There's nothing out there that's that fast with tracks, so this is a really clear affordance of speed. Raiders and anything fast will be on wheels. You think of super bikes, they're always on wheels. If we keep that language, then you see something on wheels, it's fast, something on tracks, it's slow. You can differentiate a hunter, a fast hunter, because it's got wheels. A slow hunter could have small tracks. It would be a slower hunter. So then you see the difference in speed without seeing them moving from the affordance of the locomotion. Then we've got weapon affordance. Now you think in Hollywood you have sniper rifles, shotguns, miniguns. This is exactly what that is. It's like an instant recognition of what power and type that gun is. So, for example, with the sniper rifle, if you've got a gun and you want to make it have more range, you make it longer. The barrel gets longer. If you want the gun to be much closer range, it's shorter. Again, with power, just make the gun much bigger, much wider. It's got a bigger gauge, and that is all about power. Then fire rate, you can do this in many different ways, but the clearest way to see it in distance is just having lots of guns on the vehicle. If you've got lots of guns on the vehicle, it will fire very fast. And you can support that with secondary affordances like chains of bullets going into the gun, magazines, if it's an auto-loader, and so on. But clearly, this is the best affordance for weapons. Now, up to this point, it's actually quite clear. They're easy rules, and we can always apply them. And so in the next slide, we talk about armor. Now, you won't understand what this says. I could have done this slide much better. But one of the things that design wanted us to talk about, or at least represent in the vehicle, was the place that you would shoot. So the most important piece of the vehicle to design is the piece that you can actually do damage to. So we did many versions of this where we tried to break the affordance of the armor pieces down, where we talk about impenetrable armor, heavy armor, light armor, and we tried to do that, but it had such an impact on what the vehicle looked like, it was too restrictive. And so we just focused purely on which is the bit of the vehicle you will shoot to do the most damage. And so we have raiders. These are the bikes. Anybody on a bike, you look at the rider, you think, well, that's clearly the weak spot. You will shoot that bike, shoot the raider, do the most damage. On hunters and specialists, the ones with the least armor, you would have a character, but it would be partially exposed. So you'd just see a little bit of it. And it would be covered with some shreddable armor. So you see the character, you think, oh, if I shoot that, I'll do some damage. On a behemoth, they're huge, they're the most armored, you will never have a character. We'll just make that rule, you'll just never have a character on the vehicle. Behemoths do have to have a weak spot though, and below that, we've got this yellow weak spot. This will be a glowing yellow element on the back of the vehicle that you shoot, you do damage to. That is a color that we've chosen that goes through all of the vehicles that becomes the weak spot, and it's a continued language through all vehicles. It's on hunters and specialists, but we don't need it on raiders. Raiders are just a giant weak spot. You shoot a raider, it's going to be toast anyway. So that's armor. And so to get everybody in the studio using this, there's two things we could do. We could put it onto Confluence, where no one will ever see it ever again, or we could print it out onto a huge poster and put it on the wall, and that's exactly what we did. So this sits in full view of all the vehicle artists, all the hero designers. They see this and they use it. This is their Bible. Now there's another thing, and I want to introduce you to the behemoth a little bit more. Now we have Thor in the game. He has a vehicle. It's dressed in a Jotun skin, so it's a Jotun themed, which is the frost giant. That's all the frost. Now, it's not good enough to just make this vehicle as big as it is. This is actually a huge vehicle, but you can't really tell how big it is in the game. Well, certainly without any point of reference for scale. And so if you're going to bring a character into this scene, Thor himself, you'd probably say, from knowledge of tanks, he's probably about that big. And I'll say, yeah, you're probably right. So what we need to do to fix this, because that isn't actually right, is bring in some human interactive elements. A ladder on the side of it, an axe, a sword, things that you would hold and you know how big they are, so therefore put them on the vehicle, and all of a sudden you realize, yeah, he's way too big. He should be that big. And so we fix scale. So out of context, you can see how big the vehicle is. And that's super important. And then you've got the final element to these vehicles, and that is having the character affordance on the vehicle. So we work very closely with our character art team to ensure that we share the same material types, shape language, design, and we move them across onto the vehicle. You want to have 100 characters on one side and 100 vehicles on the other side, all different, and you want to be able to go, that character, that's his vehicle, as you would with Batman and the Batmobile. It's as simple as that. And so next, just for a bit of fun, I thought we'd go through those rules with our own white box hero. And it starts with a literal white box. So, design will initially say what class they want it to be, which is scale. So they've gone with behemoth. So this is no longer a footstool, this is big. And for the sake of this, we're going to add in some human interactive elements. And so we bring in the ladder, some shovels, a bucket. All of this stuff now you recognize it has an affordance, and you go, oh, this is big. I need a ladder to climb to the top of this thing. So it's obviously not the footstool anymore. So we fix the scale. So the next thing is speed. They want it to be slow for its class. Now, all behemoths are slow, but in this case, it's slow for its class, so it's going to have a full set of tracks. And so now you look at this and you go, yeah, that looks slow. It looks big. So far, it's working. And then finally, we have guns. So with weapons, we've been through the weapon language, and they say they want powerful, close range. So what's powerful? Really wide gun. What's close range? Really short. It's going to be that. Actually, quite like this vehicle. I want it in the game. I'm not sure they will buy it, but that's essentially us feeding through all of our affordances into a white box to make a vehicle. And that's exactly what we did with Jotun. So it's a behemoth, it's fast for its class, it's got the boom shotgun, everything works. Add the character and scale affordance, and we have our vehicle. It works well, it works quickly. There's no reworking further down the line because design know exactly what they're asking for, art are aligned with it, and it all works seamlessly. But of course, we've got a lot of progression, customization, and various bits and pieces in this game, way more than I will go over now. But this is something that we need to ensure maintains that affordance. So in this case, we've got a stripped down version of Jotun, the vehicle. So this is what you would start with. This is the very first vehicle you get. You haven't played any matches. You've still got the affordance for scale on the side. You know how big it is. But as you go up these levels of progression, we call them combat cosmetics. We need to do a few things. And the first thing is we need to link it to the narrative, so it tells a nice story of the vehicle and how it gets better. Then you need to have strong visuals, so you see them, so you see it change, you see it get better. But also it needs to not have any design affecting affordance. So we can't make the gun bigger, we can't make the tracks smaller, we can't move the weak spot or make new ones on the side of the vehicle. And so what do we do? In this case, we can have some ornamental shields on the front. Now remember, I said we're not going to actually have an affordance of different armor types, because that's far too confusing. But this, at least, this is on an impenetrable piece of armor anyway. Add these shields. It just looks better. This one, you might not have seen that. This is updating the gun. So we're not making the gun bigger. We're not making it shorter or longer. We're just making it look that bit better. And so we go on. Wolves on the front, why not? These are animated wolves. They look cool. They'll be able to look around. They don't have any affordance for anything other than just being ornamental, and that's working perfectly well. And so on, we go up the levels, add some shields, add some lights, add some banners, add some weapons, to eventually the point where you've got your full vehicle all kitted out. And the reason we need to do this is design would like us to have an affordance to the vehicle that tells the player how good this person is in this vehicle. So you would see a stripped down Jotun and go, oh, somebody's never really played with this one before. And then you see one dressed like this and you go, this person knows what they're doing. And to a certain extent you think they're probably that little bit better, so I'll avoid them. And that's why this works. But then as we go further down that line, you can unlock 2D skins. So this is a texture update, and this is a treasure hoard livery. And we're able to do things like wood down the side of it, because we don't have to worry about the armor affordance, but it still has all the affordance in the weapons, it still works, you still know it's Jotun, and it just looks that much better, I believe. Then beyond this, we have the 3D skins, and this is a particularly cool little test we did. This is called Ragnarock. Of course it's called Ragnarock. So this is Jotun dressed death metal style. We've changed his gun out, it's now a giant speaker. It's not the hammer, but it's the same size as the hammer, so it has all the same affordances as the hammer. We've changed out the wolves. It's now Thor, just rocking out his guitars. They will fully animate. We've got all the spikes down the side, again, no armor affordance problems there. We continue with the scale affordance, so we've still got the ladders going up the side, but we've switched them out for the kind of ladders you go up onto a stage on. And so this is how we've been able to maintain this affordance through all of the progression and development of these vehicles, and they will all have the same level of progression. And so we think about our conclusions now and why this is important. Essentially, this gives that intuitive understanding to players about what the vehicle is and what it will do. They will look at distance. You might be in a hunter, you look in the distance, you see a specialist, and you think, I'm going to avoid that. You see a behemoth, you think, right, slow, so I can get around the side of it. It gives you all of these gameplay abilities that without really consciously thinking about it, you just know where to go and attack certain vehicles based on the size and based on the gun that they've got. This also gives us that simple consistency rule set for continuity. So you'll be able to see all of these vehicles from all different worlds and different render styles, but they will be clearly from the same game. They can be totally different, but with all these continuity elements, you'll know that it's from the same game, the same gun styles, the same weak spots. And so ultimately, as I touched on earlier, this improves the development process and gives us a higher success rate. So you go through design, they get the white box, it goes through straight into grey box. There's very little for art and design to fight over. It's all been done and agreed. And so for us, this is why it works so well.